Ranking every Jake Gyllenhaal movie from worst to best is no easy feat, with the actor enjoying a long and successful career to date. Indeed, everyone has their own opinions about which are the worst and best Jake Gyllenhaal movies. Born into the Swedish noble Gyllenhaal family, Jake was set up from the very beginning to succeed as an actor due to the continued industry influence of his parents, director Stephen Gyllenhaal and feature screenwriter Naomi Foner. Pulling together a definitive list of Gyllenhaal's movies requires a comprehensive view of his 23 years, featuring in no less than 34 starring roles. As a result, here's my top 10 Jake Gyllenhaal movie ranked from worst to best. Source Code is undoubtedly one of 2011's standout films that transcends the familiar trappings of the sci-fi genre and creates a dazzling mind game between its director Duncan Jones and the film's prospective audiences. Gyllenhaal plays Coulter Stevens, a U.S. Army captain who is sent into a digital recreation of a real-life train explosion and tasked with figuring out the identity of the terrorist who bombed the train. Source Code's reviews drew high praise from critics upon release, with several citing the plot's close ties to other mind-bending thrillers such as Tony Scott's lauded thriller Deja Vu. After his brooding, ferocious breakout in the movie Donnie Darko, Gyllenhaal needed one more film to truly establish himself as a star of the early 2000s amidst a glut of similarly handsome, sullen faces such as Skeet Ulrich and Josh Hartnett. This break materialized as the sci-fi disaster The Day After Tomorrow, in which Gyllenhaal plays Sam Hall, a teen attending an academic decathlon who finds himself trapped in a frozen, apocalyptic New York City after a superstorm herald in a new ice age in a matter of hours. Gyllenhaal's turn opposite Hollywood stalwarts Dennis Quaid and Ian Holm cemented his place among the big actors of the 21st century and would signal the dawn of a very successful, multifaceted career. The Day After Tomorrow itself is also the best kind of disaster film, ratcheting up the dread presence of climate change and focusing heavily on the human survival stories that a second ice age would inevitably force into play. In another movie that showcases the fearsome powers of Mother Nature, Jake Gyllenhaal plays Scott Fisher, an American expedition leader looking to scale Mount Everest ahead of his rival commercial climbing company. Everest tautly, yet faithfully, reenacts the harrowing true story of the 1996 Mount Everest disaster, in which the majority of both the adventure consultants and Mountain Madness climbing teams perished following an ill-fated ascent to the summit. Everest is as tense as it gets, with director Baltasar Kormaker's dizzying cinematography aiding the sense of dread that quickly envelopes this bleakest of true story films. Nestled right at the end of the glut of hidden camera footage movies spawned from the Blair Witch Project movie's success, End of Watch delivers a refreshing and radically different take on the first-person filming style. Despite the film's rampant action sequences, End of Watch is a carefully planned affair in which writer and director David Ayer is adamant not to fall into any of the usual police movie tropes, with the most obvious being the buddy cop dynamic. The gritty and intimate performances delivered by Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena are wholly committed and form the cornerstone of End of Watch's success, even if their respective stories ultimately try a little too hard to memorialize the police work shown on screen. Although Antoine Fuqua's first team-up with Gyllenhaal marks the lesser of the men's two projects together, Southpaw is still an unrelenting tale that hits as hard and fast as its plucky protagonist. Southpaw is not attempting to reinvent the wheel as far as sports dramas go, instead more than content to hit each note of a classic script akin to De Niro's iconic movie Raging Bull. Southpaw also represents one of Gyllenhaal's biggest physical transformations to date, with the actor's absolute commitment to the role of Billy Hope translating into a powerhouse sporting performance. Jon Watts' Spider-Man, Far From Home is the perfect coda to Phase 3 of the MCU, wrapping up the events of Avengers: Endgame while also cementing Tom Holland's Peter Parker as arguably the most popular Spidey to date. The beauty of Far From Home is that it feels less like a high-stakes superhero movie and more like a teen romance flick with smatterings of action and loss to elevate the film's emotionally driven plot. Gyllenhaal is perfect for the role of Quentin Beck, and later Mysterio, a superhero who eventually reveals his true, sinister machinations, making Far From Home a must-see for any Marvel fans, whether chronologically viewing the MCU or not. Before Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune, Denis Villeneuve directed The Gritty Prisoners, which focuses on the abduction of two young girls in Pennsylvania and the subsequent search for the suspected abductor by the police. Prisoners' plot is interesting enough, yet the layered and often polarizing character development woven into the film makes Prisoners such a compelling watch. The casting for Prisoners is also spot on, with Hugh Jackman and Gyllenhaal both cited for their Oscar-worthy performances at the time of the film's release. The true genius of David Fincher's Zodiac is that it lures the viewer into a carefully crafted 1970s imitation before ratcheting up the anxiety surrounding the seemingly spectral Zodiac killer. Fincher's attention to detail around the true-life crimes is spine-tingling, with Zodiac's ambiguous ending mirroring the confusion that still surrounds the killer's true identity today. Gyllenhaal's performance as the obsessive Robert Graysmith is outstanding as he navigates the labyrinth of facts that made the real Zodiac killer so elusive all those years ago, making Zodiac a chiller of the highest order as a result. Donnie Darko is a heady blend of menace and teen angst that combines into a deeply emotional and dizzying film. The movie that put Jake Gyllenhaal on the proverbial map for good, Donnie Darko is such an enigmatic film due to the fact it inspires different emotions in each audience that views it, leading Richard Kelly's film to be considered as much a work of art think piece as a suburban psychological thriller. The highest praise for Donnie Darko is the film's timeline, which saw the film struggling commercially upon release before becoming an ultimate cult classic whose relevance fails to diminish after each viewing. The mind twists differently each time Frank compels Donnie to commit terrible acts in Middlesex to create a truly outstanding and timeless piece of cinema. Dan Gilroy's directorial debut is mesmerizing, not least because his vision for the film was adapted to the screen completely untarnished by studio meddling or narrative tweaks. The stringer profession of Gyllenhaal's Lou Bloom belies a symbiotic relationship between unethical journalism and consumer demand that is repeatedly driven home over the course of Nightcrawler's story. Nightcrawler demands introspection of the most uncomfortable order, with every snap of Bloom's camera further querying the bloodthirsty nature of the modern news media cycle. Gyllenhaal, in particular, was singled out for his performance that has been compared to the towering Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver and cited as a bravura, career-changing tour de force for the actor. The violence that bubbles under the surface of Nightcrawler's narrative aggressively seeks attention from start to finish, making the Jake Gyllenhaal-led thriller a near-perfect and chilling film for the ages.